In the last tutorial, we created shot diagrams using Shot Designer. But this aerial view is an unemotional schematic about where to roughly put the camera. It doesn't really take into account the composition of the frame, the composition and framing of subjects and their relation to the background, the lens choice and the difference that makes in the foreground, the background, and so on. And all that stuff is really a huge part of filmmaking. So oftentimes filmmakers will create sketches of what the camera will actually see as a guide for working on set. And these sketches are called storyboards. Now, I didn't have the time to create storyboards for anything for the main production days. But after shooting, we wrote a new scene, which we called Scene 7B, and I actually did have the time to storyboard that one. Now, these are the drawings that I made before we shot that, and they're obviously really crude, but they still served as a helpful reference on set. Even with my inability to draw well, the shots turned out remarkably close to the storyboards. I also noted things in the storyboards that, Cordelia or Tayani were supposed to do or say in that shot, so I could also use that as a reference on set as well. For storyboarding, I've typically used the iPad app Penultimate. It syncs with Evernote so I can store my storyboards in the cloud and then always have them with me. It also allows me to use a stylus and create prettier lines, and it has some great features for sketching that make it easy to fix mistakes, which, as you can imagine, come in handy for me quite a bit. I also use the aspect ratio templates that I downloaded from Stu Mashwitz's insanely helpful Pro Lost blog. They're free, and they also really help to create a frame that's much more similar to what you actually film. Though, I should point out that my way of doing things is actually several years old. There are probably tons of way better apps for storyboarding now. But these days, frankly, I don't do much storyboarding anymore. I feel like it's kind of limiting. When I first started getting into filmmaking, I storyboarded everything and I relied on it like a crutch. I needed those storyboards. But I found that as I went through and made more films, I was just relying on them too much. And if I couldn't get what I saw in my head, I was just paralyzed. I didn't have the filmmaking skills to readjust on the fly. So I'd waste tons of time trying to religiously adhere to the storyboards. So storyboards these days aren't as integral to my workflow as Shot Designer is now. But if I know what locations I'm using ahead of time, I still might use storyboards to plan an interesting shot, knowing that if something wasn't working on set and I wasn't quite getting it, that I would just scrap the plan and improvise something better. Now, most of you are probably wondering, what if you don't have embarrassingly bad drawing skills like I do? Or what if your penmanship is actually legible to other people? Well, good news, folks, you can still make storyboards, even if your penmanship and art skills are better than mine, which means every single one of you can make storyboards. Now, all joking aside, though, even these really horrific sketches were helpful and kind of close to what we actually sought. And if I had other people on my team with me filming this, they would get it. They would know what I was after. Now, when I made the storyboards, I wasn't aware of the details of the set that we actually filmed at, kind of like this swampy area inset in the trees in this shot, or the way that we got the branches to kind of frame Tayani's face in the reverse of that. So I do feel it's important to use storyboards as a reference rather than an absolute, so you can still kind of capture those improvised magical moments that just kind of happen when you're on set. Even still, though, storyboards can be a great way to plan your shoot and communicate your vision to the rest of your team.